They say the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And there is a lot of truth to that because wealth begets more wealth. And one of the reasons for that is that savings begets more savings. Denny and I talk all the time about boosting your savings rate because your savings is the source of your future wealth. The money that you save, that gap between what you earn and what you spend, that is where your wealth comes from. That's where your future wealth comes from. So, Denny, let's dig in. Let's talk about all the ways that saving more money helps you save even more money. And the first example I want to give to this is one of the easiest to understand, and that is avoiding PMI, private mortgage insurance, for your loan, your home loan, your mortgage. If you put down a 20% down payment or more on a conventional loan or conforming loan, rather, Fannie or Freddie loan, you don't have to pay PMI. And PMI, by the way, does not protect you. That is not insurance that protects you. You're paying for insurance. It protects the bank. It protects the lender. So it is money that does not help you at all. It does not serve you in any way. It is lost money that you are flushing down the toilet every month. PMI.
And what people don't realize, Brian, I see it as a realtor all the time, is there's money added to your monthly amount and it doesn't pay down your principal or your loan or anything. It's just an added amount that you're paying for the convenience of having PMI.
Yeah. So it's an extra $50 or $100 or $125 a month that is just flushing down the toilet because you didn't put down a big enough down payment. So saving more money, having a 20% down payment helps you save more money every month for the next 30 years by avoiding PMI.
Now, what about, would it be better to buy with PMI or rent?
That's market by market, right? Because, there are some markets. I'll give you a really obvious example, actually. So, and I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole here, but San Francisco, renters in San Francisco whine and bitch and moan about how high the rent is. The rent is a huge bargain compared to home prices in San Francisco. Huge bargain. If you look at the ratio of rents to home prices around the country, there are some markets where it makes more sense to buy, right? Like on a monthly basis, even including repairs and maintenance and the other costs of home ownership. Way better deal than renting in that market. And then there are other markets where it is a way better deal to rent. And San Francisco is one of those markets. So anyway, you can sense the rant coming on, and I'm gonna stop myself right there. But the median home price in San Francisco is somewhere around $1.3 million, and the median rent is somewhere around $3,000. So huge disconnect there between the average home price and the average rent. So avoiding PMI, that is a quick and easy example of how saving more money, having a larger down payment, will save you more money moving forward. Okay, a lower mortgage interest rate due to a higher down payment as well. So not only do you save money on PMI on your monthly mortgage payment if you put down a 20% plus down payment, you also get a lower mortgage interest rate on your loan. The smaller your down payment, the more you're going to pay in interest.
Yes.
So, the lender is going to, because lenders price their loans based on risk, and the lower the down payment, the more risk for the lender. The more risk to them if you were to default, the worse their odds of getting their money back if they have to foreclose. So again, higher down payment, lower mortgage interest rate, you save money again every month. So, not only do you save on PMI, you save on interest.
There is a mindset out there that, I'll just refinance when I hit that 20% of my whatever. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, okay. So two things. If you get a conforming mortgage, if you get a Fannie or Freddie mortgage, you actually don't have to refinance. PMI will drop off automatically. So I take back what I said literally 90 seconds ago about being 30 years of extra payments. It's not 30 years of extra payments. Well, it can be 30 years of extra payments if you get FHA mortgage.
Right.
So with Fannie and Freddie mortgages, conforming mortgages, PMI does drop off automatically when you get the home below 80% of either the initial purchase price, or you can pay for another appraisal down the road if you think that it's appreciated enough in value that now you're at, your loan balance is less than 80% of the current value. But then you got to come out of pocket to pay for the appraisal. Or 80% of the original purchase price, it will knock off automatically. With FHA loans, they changed this rule, I don't know, 11, 12 years ago, where they used to work that way. Now FHA loans require you to pay mortgage insurance. They call it mortgage insurance premium for FHA loans. I don't know why they have a different name for it, but same thing though. It's mortgage insurance. They now require that for the entire life of the loan. So all 30 years of that loan, you're paying mortgage insurance if you get an FHA loan, regardless of what your balance is. So anyway, we got a little bit in the weeds there with the PMI. That's okay. Yeah, it's all good. All right. So you save money on PMI. You save money on a lower mortgage interest rate if you put down a 20% plus down payment. You also avoid interest on your other debts. If you have a high savings rate, then you're not carrying a big credit card balance and paying, wasting money on interest on your credit card bills. You're not taking out personal loans and wasting interest on that. Hopefully you have knocked out your student loans if you had any. You're not wasting interest on that. So, secured loans like a home mortgage, auto loan, you can make a case that may be worth keeping and arbitraging the money, investing it instead. But unsecured loans, get them out of your plate. Get them off your plate, pay them off, get them out of the picture, so you're not wasting money on interest. And that money that you're not wasting on interest, you can save and invest and earn even more returns, right? And build wealth even faster. When you don't carry these unsecured loans and you don't carry credit card balances, you have a higher credit score. And again, you pay less in interest when you go to take out a mortgage or an auto loan, right? These all help you with a lower interest rate. You can potentially, not always, I know there's going to be someone out there who pillories me for this, but you may be able to avoid life insurance and disability insurance by having a high enough savings rate. And hear me out on this. My wife and I, we each earn similar incomes, and we aim to live on just one person's income. So, around half of our household income. So the idea being that if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, or if my wife got hit by a bus tomorrow.
Stupid bus.
I know, right? That bus is out there just mowing people down left and right. But the household would be okay because we have a high enough savings rate that we don't need life insurance to cover that. We could absorb that shock. The surviving spouse could absorb the shock of losing the other earner because we have a high enough savings rate. So that means we don't have to blow money on life insurance. We don't have to waste money on that. That's hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Some people spend thousands every month on life insurance. Other people pay hundreds. That's hundreds of dollars a month. We don't have to spend on that insurance. So we go in and invest that money instead. So it's building wealth for us, right? So see how the savings are getting more savings. And the same goes for long-term disability insurance. Now, if you have a breadwinner kind of household where one person earns the overwhelming majority of the income for the household, maybe you do still need insurance, life insurance, until you reach financial independence, right? Where if you died, your spouse could still survive on the investment income, the passive income from investments. But, if you have a two-earner household and both people are earning, roughly equivalent amounts of money, and you have a 50% savings rate, you can avoid that stuff, right? So, and I realize a 50% savings rate is a lot, but, you want extraordinary results, take extraordinary actions. Something that, for many years I was embarrassed to talk about it, but, I've started opening up about it now, and I won't spend a ton of time here. Maybe we'll do an episode about this later. But in my late 30s, I had to unload. I had bought some rental properties when I was in my early mid 20s. Bad investments. I didn't get a mentor. I messed all that up. Later, I bought some good investments, some good rental properties, and plenty of good stock investments. But eventually, in my late 30s, that all caught up. The bad investments caught up with me. I ended up unloading all of them, and it wiped me out entirely. So I lost all of my good investments too. So we were starting from zero, basically, in our late 30s with net worth. 6 to 7 years later, we are in spitting distance of a 7-figure net worth. Reaching accredited investor status, which we'll talk about in just a second as well. But most people can't go from $0 to $1 million in 6 or 7 years, right? That's somewhat extraordinary. And it takes those extraordinary savings rates and extraordinary investment returns to do that. So, people say, 50% savings rate, that's unrealistic. Well, I did it. And you get outlandish results when you take those more extraordinary actions. All right. I touched on accredited investor status. Let's bring that up because this is actually a good time to mention that. So when you are an accredited investor, you have a net worth over $1 million, not including equity in your home, you have access to better investments. The rich actually do have access to better investments than the rest of us, right? Like that's a thing. So, and Deni, you and I look at this all the time in our co-investing club where we go out of our way to find investments that are available to non-accredited investors just because that's important to us. But it is way easier to find better investments that are accredited only. So, and for anyone who's not familiar, Deni and I organize the co-investing club. It's a passive real estate investment club where we get together every month, sometimes twice a month on Zoom, and we will vet an investment together as a club. We'll have 50 sets of eyeballs on these trying to analyze risk. And then we'll go in on them with much smaller amounts than you would ordinarily need to make these kinds of investments. So in our club, it's $5,000.
As a group, we can all have less money in each investment. There's so many benefits into that. And I guess we won't go into all that, but it's an amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're investing $5,000 at a time instead of the typical 50 or 100 grand that you would need if you invest by yourself in these. But anyway, the point just being, when you save more money, higher savings rate, building wealth faster, you get to that accredited investor status faster, and then you can build wealth even faster because you have access to better investments. The investments that we look at in the co-investing club, they're targeting mid-teens returns or higher. The investment we did as a club this past month that we vetted together as a club and went on together, it's a fund that pays a 16% distribution yield. So every quarter, you're getting those really high distribution payments. That's great. And that one actually did allow non-accredited investors. But the point stands. Accredited investors have access to better investments. All right. When you have a high savings rate, you can have a high deductible health insurance plan, right? Because you have the cash savings to meet that deductible. If you are scraping by and have nothing in the bank, then you can't have a high deductible account because you wouldn't be able to afford to pay the cash out of pocket costs, before you meet that deductible, right? If you go to the hospital, you go to the doctor, you're going to be paying out of pocket for that with a high deductible plan. And if you don't have any money in the bank, you can't do it, right? So
obviously you have to weigh some of this. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to do this. It's important if you do have health issues to weigh out cost versus deductibles and all that. And there's ways to do that.
No question. We're talking about options on the table. Like for some people, a high deductible health plan doesn't make any sense. But if you don't have any savings, it's not even an option on the table. So my daughter and I, we have a high deductible health insurance plan because we have the cash from the bank. We can cover that deductible. And then having that, a high deductible health plan, opens the door for us to have an HSA, which has the best tax benefits of any account in the US. So it's triple tax advantages. The contributions are deductible, the returns compound tax-free, and you pay no taxes on withdrawals. So it's like the best of both traditional and Roth IRAs rolled into one account. And you can only have that account. You can only have an HSA if you have a high deductible health plan. So again, savings begets more savings. And by having an HSA, that lowers my tax bill. So I save even more money. Like the money that I'm not blowing on taxes to Uncle Sam, I'm investing and growing my net worth even faster. So you can see all of these examples of how saving more money helps you save even more money. And this is how that flywheel happens, right? That financial flywheel where, you just start building wealth faster and faster and faster and saving money faster and faster and faster. All right. Here's one final one before we wrap it up for the day. If you spend less money, if you get used to living on a lower budget, then you don't need as much money as a nest egg to reach financial independence, right? Like your target nest egg, your target passive income is way less because you're living on less, right? Because you're spending less, you don't need as much money to reach financial independence. So you can get there way faster. So I'll just use easy numbers for a second. You guys are all familiar with the 4% rule that, you withdraw 4% of your nest egg in your first year of retirement. And then, so 4%, if you are following the 4% rule, then if you want to live on $40,000 a year, and we're not including Social Security in this example, obviously in retirement, that's a thing. But if you're just living on your investment income and you're following the 4%, which I don't, by the way, and that's a whole other episode that I think we actually either have already released or are going to release. Anyway, if you're following the 4% rule, you need $1 million to cover $40,000 a year of income. Then that's $1 million that's not a trivial sum of money, right? But if you want to live on $80,000 a year, you need $2 million. So that's an extra $1 million that you would need if you want to live on 80 grand a year versus 40 grand a year. So the less that you live on, the less money you need to save up in a nest egg, and the less passive income you need to replace. And by the way, if that 16% distribution fund that we brought up a minute ago, you could get most of the way to that 40 grand a year by just investing a couple $100 grand in that fund, right? I mean, if you're earning 16% distribution yield, then that's 32 grand a year income from just $200,000 invested. So not that you would want your entire nest egg tied up in one fund, but the point is you can once you start getting into more interesting investments, you can do more with it than just what the typical person is doing with the 4%. So
with investments, there is risk, and that's why diversification is very, very important.
I see you wearing that CYA hat. That's good. No, and that's why we invest small amounts every month as a club. That's why we practice dollar cost averaging, where just every month putting in $5 grand or none, or 10, or whatever a club member feels like in that month. But smaller amounts across more investments, you can do wild things with your returns. All right, Deni, anything you want to add before we call this episode complete?
Maybe you should give them the website to get the free course, which is
Sounds good. So most people are not familiar with passive real estate investments, how they work. Things like private partnerships, private notes, real estate syndications, private equity real estate funds, that sort of thing. So we have a free course on that because, again, most they don't teach this stuff in school, right? Like most of us are not familiar with this.
Sure.
So we have a free course on that, sparkrental.com/free. It's 8 episodes and they're all super short and sweet, like 5 to 10 minutes a piece. Very snackable. We recorded it that way intentionally. And guys, if you got a fresh perspective out of this episode, please rate, review the show, follow it, pass it on to your friends, colleagues, neighbors, family members, and stay weird, unconventional investor. We'll catch you next time.